Before we begin, we want to let you know we had technical problems recording this episode, and getting all three of these guys back together for a redo would take a long time. We're eager to bring you this conversation. It's full of great information, but we apologize for the sound quality. Please listen with your ears and heart open. Welcome to the Business as Mission podcast, dedicated to those who long to see God glorified in business and the nations reached for Christ. Your host is Mike Bayer, longtime BAM leader and founder of Third Path Initiative, an online education resource for starting and growing BAM businesses around the world.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Business as Mission podcast. I'm here with two great old friends of mine. Emphasis on great, not old. But we all do share something in common. We're a little bit long in the tooth. We're not ancient, but we've been down the road and around the track a few times, and that's going to play a part in what we're going to talk with you guys today about. So welcome back, Dick Weidner. Sorry, I always get that mixed up. Dick Weidner and Sam Bockmann, who has not been on this before, but he and Dick are partners and co-workers in something we call the Legacy Generational Foundation. And so I'm going to let them tell the story. But first of all, Dick and Stan, welcome.
Thank you.
So do you take umbrage in my characterization of us as long in the tooth, or do you embrace it?
We wear it as a badge of honor, Mike.
I know. I told a guy the other day how old I was. If you don't look at it, all right, fine. Here's your $5. But truth being, right, we're all, I'm happy to have teeth. When I say long in the tooth, I'm just happy to still have my teeth. So that's a good thing. But God has been gracious to us. All right, so in just the spirit of pure transparency, Stan and Dick and I work together and have worked together for years. It's something goes under the label of Tri-Venture, and it's an effort to really support and accelerate the business movement globally. Dick is a big part of this. Bob Bush from My Big Ventures is a big part of it. Stan's a big part of it. And together with Tri-Venture and Third Path, what we're trying to work on is a pathway to either starting or scaling business as mission companies around the world, but especially in the least reached and the unreached places of the world, the difficult places of the world. And so we talk about courses, right? Training, it's got to be education. So Third Path Initiative takes that on. Coaching, helping people prepare their business plans and start, handhold into the startup process. And then very often the missing component is the financial piece, funding, the capital. And so Dick and Stan have put together several times now a program that enables qualified business as mission candidates, not necessarily Americans. They are very often nationals, receive the funding they need to get their business up and running or to expand it for its impact. And so we're going to talk about this journey that they've been on. I first met Dick, Dick in, I guess it was in Jersey at Cherry Hill, or was it Philadelphia?
Cherry Hill.
Yeah. And
at the BAM conference at Cherry Hill.
Yeah, exactly. He was talking about this concept of the funding mechanism for BAM. And we knew instantly this is something we got to figure out. God had really let in, of course, Stan. I've known Stan for a long time, but we've not really worked together closely until all of this came together. So this is fun. This is almost like a family reunion for me. So let's start off, and I'll let you guys just jump in either way, but how did it start? Going back before the Legacy Generational Foundation, which is the current iteration, it's the current institution that we're talking about. But going back, I guess, Dick, to your vision, when Stan thought, the Legacy Venture Network, and kind of how we morphed into what it is today, tell us a bit of the story. Where did it begin, and what have been the highlights of the journey?
I guess I'll kick it off, but basically, personally, I was saved when I was 15 and attended a independent Bible church, and very strong in missions, very much involved in missions, very much concentrated on missions. And as a result of that, growing up within the church and becoming a leader within the church, ended up with basically two of my children going to the mission field. I still have this granddaughter who's out on the mission field, etc. Very much involved in missions, etc. In fact, for 13 years, I had created and ran a mission organization that supported my daughter in her ministry in India as a missionary there. So just that strong missional background. The financial side of the story is, see, I've been involved now for, talk about long in the tooth, this is my 60th year of being involved in investing, basically first as a banker, and then as I started my own business in 1981 of investing people's money for them. Still at it with my son. And in the meantime, was involved in various ways in starting more than half a dozen different companies, some of which didn't make it, some of which survived nicely. So I had this broad experience of a heart for missions, background in investing, and small business involvement. Not a lot, but a significant portion of my client base are small business owners. So with that combination of factors, I went to the 2014 BAM conference out in Minneapolis, where there are all like 85 of us, I think, there. I finally got a big picture of, what business as missions is all about. I'm not sure I even knew what the term meant when I went to the conference, right before I went to the conference. But as I sat through that conference, the Lord just convicted me that all these grand ideas and things that were talked about and this grand vision was not going to get very much off the ground without the money to make it happen. Being a money guy, believe me, I understand the use of money, the worth of money, and the need for money and capital. And so basically, I guess the Lord laid it on my heart that maybe I could have some peace in the whole picture using all of my background, my connections, etc. And that's what started me down the path. So I'll just punt to Stan at this point, and he can kind of fill in his involvement.
Well, Stan, I'll go back in time to 2013, maybe. It was the original first global BAM Congress in Chiang Mai. And they talked about there, what were the things that were, because BAM's been exploding for 30 years, but it wasn't exploding the way as fast as we want. And they were looking at some of the reasons. The number one reason they came up with was the lack of capital. So, to see God raising you guys up and others like the education, the great capital movement, it really, I think, at least it was for the state. All right, Sam, take us away.
I was saved at an early age, and I was thinking about my interest in missions, and it goes back, believe it or not, to when Jim Elliot and the other four men were killed in 1956. I was 11 years old, and it had a tremendous impact on me, although it didn't eventuate in any direct involvement in missions for quite a while. But I was very interested in knowing Christ and making Christ known, the whole discipleship process through my early years. And I think all of this came together for me in terms of doing missional business when our local church was confronted with a couple who wanted to go to the nations through the marketplace. We didn't even call it BAM back then. This is about 20 years ago, a little bit more than 20 years ago. And so we had this tiger by the tail, so to speak, of how do we do this? What's a people group? I mean, it was pretty elemental at that time. We didn't know one people group from the other, and let alone how to do business among unreached peoples. But the Lord prospered that couple from our local church. They were doing BAM before it was BAM, in my view. And then I got exposed to the concept more formally when I met you in Hershey, Pennsylvania, a number of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And subsequent to that, went to Kazakhstan with Larry Sharp and some others from IBEC, and really had my eyes open to the potential of marketplace ministry, what our friends were really doing in Central Asia. Coincident with that, I would say, was being invited by Dick to join him in the work that he was doing in support of Indian work. And then the Lord started to provide some resources mostly through Dick's contacts, I would say. And we started to realize that there was a role to be played in launching small missional businesses, some very zealous couples wanting to go to the nations, to places you can't go on a missionary visa, and getting in the game to support them in getting their businesses started. So that's kind of what's brought us to this point. Initially, we launched Legacy Ventures Network as an incubator and as an accelerator for missional businesses, and that still exists. But as we'll talk about a little bit more, I think we realized we're going to need donated capital to help some of these folks in the early stage of their businesses.
Yeah, it's interesting. Dick, I had you on mute. If you want to unmute yourself, we'll jump in here together. It came together, and you guys tell this, but you just said it, and the need for donated capital. And I know when Legacy Ventures Network first started, it was a true sort of SEC registered investment fund that had, as we were talking earlier, all kinds of regulatory issues, not about honesty and legal and all that, but just keeping all the books, filing all the forms and stuff. And so that began to change. So I don't want to tell the story. You guys tell the story from there. So Legacy Ventures Network was one of the early investment funds, sort of traditional in its structure, focused on this part of the world. There's others out there, but this is one of the earliest ones. It's certainly the one I know best. So tell us about starting that between the two of you, and then what's the journey now to where you are? I think in that there's some really key points we want to get out to our audience about. There's nothing wrong with doing what we did, what you guys did, but also there's reasons you're doing what you're doing now. And what you just said at the end, Stan, about, donor-based, treated like investments, but not having all of the rules and regulations to attend to. So don't let me mess that story up. You guys tell the story.
Not trying to brag or anything, but I like to think big, right? I'm the kind of macro guy. When you're in the investment business, you're always looking at the macro picture. What's the big picture here? And basically, as I sat back and looked at the big picture and all the information that comes my way as part of my business, it became very clear to me that we were facing the largest wealth transition in the history of the world over the next 15 to 20 years. And that's because the baby boomers, who have amounts of wealth due to inflation. Just a simple example that many might relate to is the house that I bought for $16,000 50 years ago is now worth $350,000, right? Pure inflation. It's still the same old house, a few little improvements on it. And that's true for a lot of baby boomers, right? And during the same period of time, employer benefit accounts came in, 403Bs, 401Ks, opportunities for people to invest without really knowing they were doing it. Just money was coming out of their paycheck every week. So the wealth transfer is estimated somewhere between $70 and $75 trillion will pass intergenerationally over the next 15 to 20 years.
Say that number again.
$70 to $75 trillion.
I mean, I can't imagine how much that is.
A lot of commas and zeros.
A lot of commas and zeros, exactly. Yeah. A lot like the federal budget.
Yes. In addition to that, and again, I make my living with people doing pre-retirement planning and helping them through retirement. Basically, the baby boomers being post-depression, their main concern is, if I could define the investment objective in most of my clients is, make me as much money as you can without taking any risk, which is kind of ridiculous to begin with anyway. But basically, they're concerned about the return and minimum risk. They want to make sure they got enough money to live on and leave some to the kids. That's common denominator. However, when you look at the following generations, millennials, Gen X's, Gen Z's, etc., all the reports from many sources indicate that approximately 2/3 of those, and it's even higher with women than men, have a social concern. They want their money, their investment to do something other than to provide them with low risk returns on their money. All right. They want social good, social justice. And for Christians, they want to have some impact with their dollars. So basically, as this money's transferred, and the transfers has begun already, you're going to end up with these young couples, or some of them go creeping into middle age at this point, who have this sudden infusions of wealth, in some cases, multi-millions of dollars. I'm experiencing it right now. I got 5 situations right now where that's happening intergenerationally for my clients. And so, again, from a macro point of view, with the fact that so much of the world is now being closed to traditional missions, it appears the only way to get in these countries right now is through ban projects, etc. The greatest need for that to happen is the provision of capital. And we got $70 trillion that's going to come tumbling down, a significant portion of which will find our way into the hands of Christians. All right. It just occurred to me that this is God's great provision to make it happen. The great missing piece is money. You got this huge mass of funds that's going to transfer into the hands of generations that have a lot more concern about what their money does for them other than make their life easier. And the basic question that became, how can we capture those funds for God's glory to provide for this kind of project? So what happened then is, so my big picture was, let me start a private equity fund, which a lot of you would recognize as a hedge fund. That's a common term used for them. Accumulate the funds in there, invest the dollars in missional businesses. By God's grace, accomplished that task, made a lot of attorneys a lot of money doing it, and incurred much more in the way of administrative responsibilities and requirements than I ever imagined. And trying to operate this out of my desk drawer and run a business just became overwhelming. And God provided a couple of young men who were willing and able to take over the management of that and the responsibility for that. And it's grown. The fund has grown now to multi-millions of dollars, which is still up and operating. It's now called the Heron Fund. And basically, I stepped back from the administration of that, and being the overall partner running it, still connected with it, but realized through that process, as we were accumulating the funds and investing the funds, that I want to use good words for that it became bureaucratic. All right. All of a sudden we had investment committees. We had, multi-levels of people involved in meetings, which went on forever and just went from one committee to another committee to another committee, etc. And it became...
By the way, it's exactly how hedge funds operate.
Yes.
It's the nature of the beast, right?
Right. Learned long ago when I was still in banking, running the bank trust department, that the reason you had committees was that no one person had to take responsibility for any decision. It was the committee's decision, not mine. So basically it just became far too cumbersome to accomplish. And also realized that when you're dealing with those big numbers and, you got $1 million to invest, you really don't want to spend a whole lot of time and energy looking at a guy who wants $15,000 to start a business in northern India or Indonesia or somewhere. That just the size of the projects that we were hoping to accomplish in those really difficult areas just did not work when you're dealing with millions of dollars, that had been invested for return. And I came to the conclusion that the kind of businesses that were my heart and Stan's heart, your heart's concerned with, where you can $10,000 to $30,000 can get them up and running, etc., just did not work in that kind of environment. The other side of the coin was, for the last 10 or 12 years, I've chaired a foundation that was created by one of my clients for the very same purpose, to get the gospel to the least reached places of the world. And that functions very simply. We get together 4 times a month, one of them, or a year, tomorrow is our meeting, a quarterly meeting. We sit down, we look at something, we say yes, no, and it happens. It's very simple, very little government oversight. You file a tax return once a year, and the administrative costs are negligible. And so basically, Stan sits on that same foundation. We came to the conclusion that the simplest way to get these smaller businesses that needed donated dollars to really get started and up and running was to start a foundation. And that was with one phone call to my good friend, the attorney, and some grace on his part. We started the whole foundation for $1,500.
We'll pause here for a short message. Do you know the steps to take if you want to launch a BAM business? That's what the Tri-Venture Path to Capital program is all about. The path begins with 4 key courses you can take online. Learn the biblical foundation for business as mission, how to create a BAM lean canvas, and how to establish a BAM strategy. From there, you will be coached in the fine points of starting your business and how to prepare a pitch for investors. And finally, when you're ready, we'll set up an actual pitch to real investors with a real heart for BAM. Learn more on the Third Path Initiative website, thirdpathinitiative.com.
Dick, as you're talking about this thing, I'm watching, and I've watched this happen in real life, as God started bringing capital resources to the BAM movement, which we all said, we know we need it. It is now sort of bifurcated into 2, both totally legitimate directions, right? There are the sort of hedge funds, equity funds that are investing big amounts of money, in my mind, big amounts of money, and they're needed, right? They're desperately needed in the world. And then there's that other side, which, like you say, that's kind of our passion, is the smaller business owners who are really integrating in a community and not only providing for their family, but having gospel impact right where they live, and they're primarily national. And if you once upon a time you'd have thought, well, which way is right? The answer is both ways have a function. And it's been interesting for me watching this happen in our experience together, that God is leading you and Stan now at this legacy generational foundation, which is much more nimble, much more focused on the smaller businesses with less regulation. And the Heron Fund, great group, Eric and his team, great people, great heart for God, very different animal. Stan, there's a lot of points I want to make and questions I want to ask, but you want to add to the story? Because you are just along for the ride. You are Dick's bosom friend and lifelong companion.
Yeah, Dick and I served as fellow elders at our local church for 25 years, I guess, something like that. And I'm certainly not an investment authority in any way. In fact, when Dick and I joined forces, the question was, well, what do I do in this enterprise? And the answer was, find us projects. The Lord has allowed me to just have a lot of contacts. I like to network with folks. And so I was able to bring IBEC to the table, for instance. And I guess through IBEC, bring Mike Baer, into the mix. So my primary contribution has been just bringing missional projects and connecting folks from agencies and individuals into our donor base and also into our base of practitioners who are going to take the gospel to the nations. I do a lot of the administrative work, I guess you would say, to help keep the wheels turning as well.
So and those of you who don't know Stan is the consummate connector. If you don't know somebody, you tell Stan what you're looking for, and he either knows somebody or he knows somebody who knows somebody. So the line in, I forget now which movie, I Know a Guy, that's Stan in a nutshell. He knows guys. So when you look at this, and let's make a distinction. So when I invest money in a venture capital firm, a hedge fund like Heron, it's still my money, and they're investing on my behalf, and there's a mechanism to all that. And I may lose all of it. I may make a bunch of money. I may make a little money. All of that's possible. But now we're talking about in the foundation world, it's technically a charitable donation. And I think there are many in the BAM movement that try to move away from that because they didn't think it felt very businesslike. I know you guys well. You're running this foundation, leading this foundation like a business. And the money that you are providing to entrepreneurs is not just charity. You're not treating it like charity. It may be that's the legal distinction, but you don't treat it like charity. You treat it like business. Talk about that in terms of how you look at investments, how you look at your donor investors. I'm one, proud to be one. Look forward to doing more. But it's not just for me. It really is for God's glory in other places. How does this roll out in dealing with the coffee shop owner, the restaurant owner in North India, for example? What's the business-like flavor of that?
I think one of the, I guess I'll call it fallacies of doing projects with purely donated funds with no intentionality on the part that the recipient has, any responsibility for repayment or, real careful management of the funds makes it, I don't want to say a little too easy on the part of the recipient to not bear the responsibility. But if we're talking about a business enterprise and you're the guy, who's intending to make a living off this and to hire other people and expand the business and be responsible as a business owner, that basically, these funds are distributed in the form of loans, right? Now, the terms for those loans might be very generous. Generous, I mean by low interest rates, and there are extended repayment periods. But the intention always is that the funds that are invested will be returned to the foundation over a period of time as a result of interest and principal payments on loans, which then does two things. Number one, it puts the responsibility where it should be on the business owner to run this business well enough to make a living and to repay the money. Right? We want a real business here. We don't want some guy who's taking a flyer and is going to take your $20,000. If it doesn't work, say goodbye and walk away. We want commitment, all right? And commitment in the form of signing a loan document. The second part of that is then it becomes, if somebody gets repaid, we reinvest it and reinvest it. So your donation basically gets multiplied. And so basically, yes, it's the donation, but hopefully that donation over a period of time will remain within the fund. And as it gets repaid, it's getting rolled over and rolled over and rolled over. Next business. Now, that doesn't benefit the donor financially. But what it does do is it multiplies basically the money given. As that money regenerates and gets rolled over and rolled over and rolled over, and it sustains the foundation. Whereas in a normal foundation, the foundation I referred to, funds that we have that aren't invested in projects, are invested in stocks, bonds, paying interest, dividends, those kinds of things. Well, in this case, basically the return is interest. So that's the basic concept. The second one, I'll punt to stand on this one, is that we want the individuals involved in this to be more than just a donor writing a check and kind of forgetting about it. I got my receipt, I'll put it with my tax stuff. So our general concept is as follows, and Stan, I'll punt to you on that one.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple things. One is, I think what Dick just described in terms of the kinds of projects that we will be involved in, it really rises and falls on how well vetted those projects are. And that's where our partners at TriVenture come in. We feel like they're very well trained, Mike, through your Third Path initiative, and we feel like they're very well coached and prepared to do business by IBEC. And so we have, these courses and coaching, and then we provide the capital. We feel like it's a real a real winning combination. We don't have trepidation about the folks that we're investing in. So that's point number one. And then to Dick's point on participation, we really envision providing updates to our donors, like where our projects are. It's a very sensitive issue in hard to reach places in the world where governments are hostile and such things. But to the extent that we can, we want to keep our donors informed of the projects, how they're doing, even be in contact if we can arrange that in a secure way, so that our donor community becomes pretty highly involved in the mission, praying for prayer requests and special needs and for growth and for fruit in the gospel. So we want it to be more than just writing, as Dick said, writing a check and walking away. We want this to be a family of donors and practitioners of missional business ultimately.
Stan, when you're talking, I know there's been around for a long time this idea of donor-directed giving, right? Where you put money into a charity of some kind, a foundation of some kind, and you have some say or all the say where it goes. That's one thing. But what you're describing is donor-engaged giving, right? I mean, they're not just giving and saying, hey, I want to go to India. They're giving and they're getting to know the guy, friends the guy in India. They may even provide some mentoring. Who knows? They may go visit the guy. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful model. I love the way you're describing.
Well, I would say, maybe our donors have a guy that they know who wants to go to the nations. Maybe they have a child who has graduated from college and wants to serve Christ in a hard to reach place. We can connect them with you. We can connect them with Bob Bush and hopefully ultimately help them along the way. And, I think one of the interesting challenges we're going to have is to take the donor base beyond North America, beyond the West, to start to incorporate donations from the global South and from Asia itself. I mean, that would be a fantastic thing. And those donors are going to have a guy. No doubt there's going to be plenty of folks who want to carry the gospel to their own tribes and tongues and peoples and nations.
I want to get to kind of the final point we talked about earlier, which is, the future of legacy and the next generation. And let's talk about that in a minute. But what comment? Many of the countries we've worked at, like India, there's not really a lack of capital. I mean, there's enormous wealth in India. And it's very difficult, as we've discovered, to get outside capital in. So it's in that case, how do we unlock, it's just more of a thought for us to pray about, but how do we unlock the existing capital in Christian hands in India so they can go through exactly what you just described? They know a guy. They bring a guy. They contribute so that the guy can start his business in a responsible kingdom way. So the potential is not an America or the West to the rest strategy. This is truly, I'm thinking of a term, Nick, you'll probably tell me it's inappropriate in the financial world, but I think about a kingdom community investment fund, right? But this is really the people of God banding together to focus their money, well, not really their money, God's money, for kingdom purposes. I mean, it's this community. I guess it's your span as you were talking, this community of donors and donor investors who are truly forming up around these businesses. And that's my definition of community. Is, we build the barn together, we raise the barn together. We don't just hire somebody to do it. We do it together. I think as you guys talking, I get this really nice picture, this nice vision in my head. So that being said, Dick, you want to correct my terminology there. We were talking earlier, so you guys don't plan on doing this forever. You've already, like in your business, Dick, you've already got, you've created a succession plan. Your son is now running the business on a day-to-day basis. What about the future of legacy? Where's that going from that perspective? I mean, I know we want more money, we want more projects, we want more connections. See Stan in the footnote. But the real question is, okay, what about you guys and what's next for legacy in your mind?
Stan and I think and talk and pray about this frequently. All right. And basically, as we put together the existing board of Legacy General Fish Foundation, we've made sure that several of the board members are of that millennial, Gen X, Gen Zs. All right, we're certainly willing and hopefully to add to that number on the board as we grow. The second thing is Suzanne and I, by God's grace, we hope, have found someone who is a little more than 10 years our junior, who might hopefully will be willing to step in and take the overall reins sometime into the future. But the long-term hope and prayer is that this whole operation will be run by those of the younger generation who have caught the vision. And that's our hope, that's our prayer. We've got 3 members of the board now who fit that. My daughter's one of the board members. She was a missionary. She has great administrative skills, and frankly, I can see in the future her being the main operating person for the foundation. She runs that other foundation that I referred to that one of my clients set up. She's already got 12 years experience doing it. So there are those, and we're very concerned about that, because I've seen, as you have, too many things that die when their creator or the initial guys, God moves them or calls them home. But we're very concerned and proactive doing it, and believe that God is in the process of already providing that in the way of personnel.
How do people find out about this? There's a new website, right?
Website, legacygenerationalfoundation.org, or you can call Dick at 856-663-7011. He'd be glad to talk to you. Or email him at dweidner@legacygenerationalfoundation.org.
Or you.
Or me.
Don't want Dick to have to carry the whole load, man. Come on.
No, we want him to carry the whole load.
Just one caveat. When you call that number, you'll get my business phone. We don't have a Legacy Generational Foundation direct phone line at this point anyway. So you'll hear either Financial Planning Services or Weidner Associates. One other thing I just wanted to throw in here is that, there's no size for donation in this case. I mean, you can send in $100, you can send in $200, whatever. It doesn't have to be a huge gift.
And you can donate online, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Mail a check in if you need to. There's multiple ways to do it.
Right.
Yeah, the website has a direct link for donations and also information on how to donate via check or wire transfer, even as you work that out with Dick.
Fantastic. All right, Stan, I'll give you the last word. And I'm going to make one comment after you. So you get really technically the next to the last word.
I'm just really excited that pretty much anybody can participate in this, whether you're a baby boomer or Dick is actually a builder generation. Actually, so am I, to be honest. I'm not quite a boomer. Thought I was a boomer my whole life, but I'm not. But the older generations can set an example by getting involved with this for the younger generations. And then the younger generations themselves, I think, can ascend into leadership and see their desires for social justice and things like that merging with the advancement of the gospel. I mean, that's really the goal, is to see people come to Christ. So anybody can get involved, and that's a beautiful thing.
Right. So here's the comment I was saying to the end. It won't embarrass these guys, but I'll tell you guys, tell the audience. So we, TriVenture T, which is made up of Third Path Initiative, that's my group, IBEC Ventures, that's Bob Bush and others group, and now Legacy Generational Foundation, which is Dick and Stan. We meet at least once a month for an update and prayer together. And I say this to sort of put all of this in a kingdom context. The highlight for me is invariably we will ask Dick and or Stan to open or close in prayer. And you guys both know I feel this way. When you guys pray, that is such a joy and encouragement to me, not because you're great prayers, that's not really my point, but because it's coming from the heart. And I think that's, anybody listening to this that has an interest, if you want to understand more about Legacy Generational Foundation, it's in a heart work. It began with God. It's grace in Stan and Dick's lives. It's grace going beyond that. This is really God is in this. That's my point. And when you are with people and you pray with them, you know. And so these guys, I thank you guys for being the men that you are, whatever the builder generation needs. My dad was that. And they called it the greatest generation. But you guys are real men of God. And I want the listeners to know that this is not just financial. This is eternal, which is kingdom. And it is coming from a great spot in the hearts of these men and the others around. So they won't say anything to that because I'm embarrassing them. And you know what, guys? I don't care. I want our folks to know the depth of what God is doing. So with that said, thanks for being with us. Gosh, this has been fun. We tried so hard to get this done. And how many times? It's been months trying to get this off the count.
Oh, only a half a dozen or so.
Well, we finally did it. So I'm so glad you guys joined us.
Thanks for having us, Mike.
All right.
Mike, love you.
We love you guys. Good to see you.
Thanks for listening to the Business as Mission podcast. We invite you to become part of the story by supporting the BAM podcast at patreon.com/BAM Stories. There's a link in the notes with this episode. For more information, go to thirdpathinitiative.com or tryventure.com. Please share this podcast and give us a review wherever you listen.